Hello, wonderful folks. It's been a long time, and welcome to Our Relationship 2, a podcast about long-distance relationships, but also relationships to everything else in this context. We are so excited to finally be in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're in the same room.
We're all in the same
yeah.
room. There's a
And-
whole bunch of juicy outtakes that I have. Oh, actually, I deleted them all. Sorry.
Oh, no!
Shit.
No! It was just
You will
us.
never hear Ludwig describing his mayonnaise-filled pus pimple.
Or us,
Oh, no.
us taking turns torturing Felix by
Yeah.
chewing the microphone and drinking water and just making him feel disgusting and horrible inside.
Thanks, everybody.
But also, you now know why we won't get any work done in the same room, because we're all too silly.
We all just end up trolling each other. It's great. All of you are just trolling me because I'm the one that's doing
You're the
all
one
the
that
hard work
cares.
here. I'm the one that cares.
So for
Shame.
today's episode, we are going to be talking about being apart during your long distance and then having those periods of when you're actually in person. So this podcast is kind of like, or this episode specifically is very symbolic of that sense, as in we had really long distance friendships for this whole entire time, the whole entirety and plus some for this podcast, and now this is our very first episode where we're all in the same room. We're going to talk about the changes of, or the differences of maintaining that relationship apart and being together, and some of the challenges of being apart and being together.
Yep.
Definitely challenges with being apart and together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm Char/Cheryl.
I'm Felix.
I'm Grae.
And I'm Ludwig.
We forgot how to do an intro because
You guys know who we
Hello
are.
everybody to
It's been
our
so
relationship too, where four friends from three different countries talking on
We're
four
in two relationships.
in
So-
two relationships
two married relationships.
You can
being
tell.
on
One podcast.
podcast.
Hey.
Hey.
You can.
remember.
You can tell we've done this a whole lot recently.
We've been quite busy lately.
Oh, yeah.
The transition from going to Germany to Canada was also very stressful.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta kind of put your life in another country on pause for a second.
That's
to
true.
Be in another country for a whole month and still try to have things move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time moves strangely slow in the beginning and then
Super
later
fast.
on
Everything got
super
really,
fast.
really fast. Yeah, especially since things started opening up again. It was just like, oh, wow, we can do things again? All right. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so our first half of the episode is going to be about being apart. So actually, this was a really great moment in my relationship with Ludwig, because the first time I ever visited him was 10 months after we kind of like started seeing each other, and I had no idea what to expect. And so
Me neither.
I went to Cher to like talk about it, because I was like, what do I do? Like, what am I expecting?
Isn't this like your first relationship in a while, too?
Yeah, it's like 7 years. I didn't date, and I was just like, I was like girl bossing in like the positive way, not like the negative way. And like I was focused on my career. I don't need no boy. I was like working and
And here comes this
schooling.
German man with ye old English
Yeah.
handwritten letter,
Hallo,
half drunk.
guten Tag.
half drunk, written old English letter. And I was like, yeah, okay. But is this like Bay or Fay? Because he used the German term Minne, which is like a medieval term, right? So I was like, what is the current modern day equivalent of this? So, yeah, 10 months after that, I was like, yeah, let's go on a trip. If it doesn't work out, I still went to Germany, and I can say I traveled to Germany. But if it does work out, then I'll, like, I don't know how to make it work. So this was like the defining moment for us. I guess to say this is going to be a solid relationship or not. So, putting that pressure on the first meeting is also not the greatest, but also at the same time, you want to know, do you want to continue this or not?
So,
Yeah.
Ludwig, I have a question for you then.
Yeah.
What food did you give Grae to solidify the deal here?
I guess back then I wasn't as aware about how deep Grae's connection with food really is. But I remember that the first food I gave them was sandwiches, German-style sandwiches. So I got the goods, whole grain bread, like dark bread, and I put in cheese and cucumbers and marmalade. And
Marmalade or marmite?
Marmalade.
Oh, okay.
You don't really get marmite in Germany. And I went to the airport. And then Grae was so tired that the first thing they drank was a mate. And even that didn't help. For everybody who doesn't know, mate is a Brazilian drink, which is made out of some kind of leaf. It's very caffeinated. And in Germany, you mostly get it in form of...
mate!
Mate. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In form of a sugared up lemonade.
Yes.
Like
You had yerba... Was it yerba
Yes,
mate?
yerba mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had yerba mate and you were still tired?
Yeah, it was a long flight, friends.
And then there's also the time change as well.
Yeah, so like the day was already almost done.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I was like, but like my day is still going. But I had a really early morning, so it was very. I don't even remember much of the travel part. I just remember I made a German friend, and he offered to take me on his boat. And I was so confused. I was like, why would you have a boat in Berlin? It's like in the middle of nowhere. And I didn't know that at the time Berlin had a lot of rivers that you can ride boats and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Either way, we had like a moment of like long distance reunion. It's like slow mo. We're running towards each other. We're
magical
hugging.
music in the background, Baywatch theme.
Oh, so are you saying you're David Hasselhoff?
I would not dare
Pam, I
to be
understand.
the Hoff.
Pam, I understand them.
Yes. My long flowing hair.
Fantastic chest.
Absolutely.
I was Cheryl's first date, and I visited Cheryl when we first were trying to work this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all you gotta say for yourself?
I was like a wreck
You still are.
as a person. I was more so of a wreck as a person than I am now.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, my mom... How was the trip? I don't think I ever asked you. How was your first trip down? Was it...
It was fine.
It was short.
It was short.
so-
I was really hungry, and then I finally got to try Chick-fil-A for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
That was good.
I remembered feeling the most shame for you I'd ever felt. Right when I first met you, because... Didn't you have, like, sushi or something at the airport before you came down?
I don't remember.
So... I was like, I've never really, like... met somebody like this before. And when he came and sat down next to me when he arrived, he smelled of seaweed.
Oh, did I have a seaweed snack, maybe?
You might have, because you smelled like seaweed, like not even your breath, just like you smelled of seaweed.
Maybe I didn't shower.
I don't know. But I was just like, I had like this very primal thought. I'm like, is this what Canadians smell like? That was the first time I'd ever smelled you. So that was just kind of like what I had in mind. And that was literally my first thought when you sat down next to me.
That's really interesting because one of the more prominent memories of first meeting in person after like starting a relationship was also smell. Like, Ludwig smelled really herbally and like sweet, kind of like not weed, earthy, but
Kind of vegetally?
I used to smoke back then. think it was just the tobacco smell, because I prided myself back then that I was only smoking high quality tobacco and I didn't smoke that much, like 1 or 2 cigarettes in the evening. But I think that was mostly it, which they smelled in the morning.
I think, Cheryl, you smelled mainly of like old musky house smell.
Yes, because my parents are old.
Yeah.
And I might remember from my first meeting when this tiny person charged towards me and gave me a hug. I was like, oh, dang, they are way smaller than I remembered. And B, I smelled their hair, and it was just this beautiful kind of flowery musky scent, which is still there if I smell the head of it, which I'm like, yes, this smells good.
So now we're discussing our relationship to smells.
Yeah.
When it comes to being apart, and then that was always been tough, and we'd always be sending letters and whatnot. But when we lived together, a lot of things also changed relationship-wise too, because now we had to learn how to navigate this person that you normally see once every year for only 3 to 4 days, maybe 2 weeks.
How long would you usually spend together when you'd visit before you moved in?
2 weeks.
About 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Because I think usually we would only be, like, with my schooling and your schooling and my work and whatnot, usually we could only, like, afford, like, a week.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe, like, 10 days at max.
I was always busy.
You always are busy.
Oh, shut up.
And then I was in school at the time as well.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't just nod.
Yeah.
Oh no, I said I think for us it was also 1 week. It wasn't. 2
Oh,
weeks.
I see.
2 weeks is like visiting family. That's
Oh.
Yeah, Grae is the Felix counterpart in this relationship.
Yeah. Very true. But I think what's also really interesting is one of the advice that Cher gave me when we started seeing each other in person, as in like Ludwig and I, was that it will be really intense for like the first couple of moments, and you're like reorientating yourself, and like you're like, oh god, this person's like who I really care about is in front of me.
Yeah.
And then at some point it's going to like kind of plateau, and you're easing into like your own rhythm. But even that rhythm is very different because it's still short in the long run, because like you're only there for a week.
Yeah.
So 1 week can be super intense. And if you're still trying to figure out whether this relationship is going to work or not, you have to take those factors in, because you'll feel all the emotions. You'll be super passionate. You're valuing the time a lot because it's so seldom. Like Ludwig and I only saw each other every 6 to 10 months. So 1 week out of that 6 to 10 months is very precious for us. And that value of time also changes when you are living with them for a longer term. So
it's also exhausting because you're trying to get as much time together in as you can. So you're like, we got to go see this and this and this. Like, go to this attraction, show you around this part of town, go to this event. And so you're constantly like running around.
Yeah.
Or spending time with family, or going out and trying restaurants and stuff. And it's great. And then when you're finished, you're just like, ugh.
yeah.
I remember that for the first 4 of our meetings, I was constantly, and so was Grae, constantly very stressed out. Like, it was 2 weeks, but it felt like we were collectively running a marathon. There is not a quiet moment. Even when we had a quiet moment, we had the urge to fill it somehow. Like, you have so little time in person
that's
with
right.
each
Yeah,
other.
because we would plan so much in that 1 week, or in that 3 or 4 days that we'd see each other.
Plus, like, I don't know what time of year you typically would see each other, but typically we'd come and visit during Christmas, like the week between Christmas and New Year's. So, and that in and of itself is a busy time, even if you're not visiting a long distance partner of yours. So that also was like on top of it. And I think the only time that we didn't hang out during Christmas was like summer, but that was your graduation, so that was still a big event. So on top of wanting to do everything, you've got like a big event happening for one of the two parties, at least in our case, I think. So you come back and you're just like, what happened?
Now that we're living together, it's definitely changed, and our priorities have definitely changed as well. It's no longer, can we stuff as many things as we can in 1 week? It's now more
Now we are in for the long haul.
Yeah. And that's changed the relationship a lot too, which is really kind of interesting.
Yeah, I noticed as soon as Grae moved in with me that a lot of the priorities which I used to have around the house and around my life just sometimes subtly and sometimes not so subtly shift around, right? And a lot of things which I took for granted or which I just had running in the background were different.
How so? Can you explain or elaborate?
For example, I noticed that when you moved in with me, you brought your own sense of what is order and standards in the house in lieu of a better word. But at first I was trying to resist it because I was in my comfort zone. Like I was not. Like I didn't care that much if the dishes were not done properly or if the ground was dirty. But then after a while, I started to get into the whole swing of actually, yes, this feels quite nice to come into the kitchen, and it's not looking dirty 90% of the time. I can walk barefoot without clinging to my feet 90% of the time.
Now, when you moved in with Ludwig, did Ludwig already have? Did you already have your own place, or were you with your parents? Okay.
Yes, I had my own place.
Ours is a little bit different because we had to move into my parents' place first.
Because we were poor.
We were poor, so we were basically living in my parents' basement for a couple of months, and then we saved up enough money to move into a condo. But definitely, when Cheryl moved in and we were getting stuff sorted out, there's definitely a shift. I felt that too, where things are just a little bit different. Oh my God, I'm living with another person now, and yes, I love them, and yes, I understand them, but I'm gonna understand them in an even deeper level now than I have before, and there's gonna be some things that they're gonna annoy me about, but on the same token, I'm gonna do some things that you're gonna be annoyed as heck about.
There's also the factor of like I had finite power in how I did things in the house because aside from the basement, everything above the basement was your mom's domain. True. And so like I couldn't just go into the kitchen whenever I wanted, especially if she was in there cooking. Yeah. Or even if she wasn't cooking, if she was in there, like that's still kind of her domain. And so like only the basement was really our area. So like I could keep the basement clean how I wanted and I could organize things in the basement how I wanted, but literally anything else I was kind of like I can't touch anything. And I would get used to like kind of using some of the other stuff, but it's still a strong it's kind of like living in like a boarding house almost where like you're using somebody else's utensils. Yeah. Okay. You might have your own stuff and like I would use my own cup sometimes, but most of the time I'd use mom's cups because I mean they're there. Yeah. And we would have like our own store of food down in the basement because anything that was upstairs was free game. Especially for because that's how it worked.
Yeah, especially for my brother who eats a lot.
Yeah. And I'm used to like in my parents' house back in the States having like my own little stash of food because my parents just in general don't really like what I like. Yeah. The same was not the case because Fabian would be like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, I like that."
Yeah, Fabian doesn't care. He's still living the bachelor life, you know. Yeah, but then but even then, still within that limited space, we started to learn about how we operate things, how we do things together, and then. We also, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you two have experienced this as well, but you have to find a new way of communicating with each other. Yeah. Because I used to have to remind myself that Cheryl's not telepathic. Cheryl can't read my mind.
I try. It's hard.
But sometimes I have to actually just tell them, like, what do you mean this doesn't make sense to you? It makes sense to me. Yeah. So I had to actually explain to Cheryl, like, this is why this makes sense to me. And
yeah. I feel like oftentimes, especially when I'm stressed, I internalize a lot of my thought process and I think it through whilst I'm acting, which is very stressful for Grae because they communicate more open about what to do next, and then they are lacking this side from me. I'm like, give me a minute to figure this out, and I'm like sitting there and starting acting without giving a clue why I do certain things. So I still need to learn to just slow down in a moment and be like, okay, this is what I have in mind. Let's break it down. So maybe this makes sense in your eyes. Yeah. Or ears, rather.
It's kind of interesting how that aspect of the relationship has been added, especially now that we're all together and not apart. Because when you're apart, you don't really think about that. You know, they just come in for the weekend, you're so busy, you're just planning everything out, and you're doing things, you have a whole itinerary planned out, and then by that time, you're gone. You're done.
And yeah, like, what do you talk about when you're bored? Or like,
exactly. What do you talk about when there's nothing else to do? What do you watch? What do you listen to?
Like, you didn't have the time to build hobbies together when you're visiting.
Oh my god.
And then now that you're living together, do you have hobbies to
That's a fair
do things
point.
together?
Yeah.
Or, like, what are communal activities and what are activities solely for you?
Yeah.
One of my favorite communal activities when Cheryl and I were apart was watching anime and watching films.
Yeah.
Ready?
3, 2, 1, go. Like we would each have the tab for YouTube up on our respective computers, and so that we weren't like really off sync of what was going on in the film or whatever, we would like sync up 3, 2, 1, go. And if like I'd have any internet problems, I'd be like pause, and so we'd both pause our video and like refigure out like, oh, my internet's back.
425? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we would do that.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, Grace and I did the same, but with one or two notable exceptions where they were streaming to me, because they found movies and videos on Canadian Netflix where I had no access to, and so they used, I don't know what, Rabbit, and just
Not
streamed
sponsored.
it.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
But like there's
But hit
like,
us up, Rabbit feed.
I don't know if it's still around, but like essentially this website, it allows you to share your screen and sound. This was like before Zoom, and Skype was like
Skype was a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Still is.
yeah,
It was
but
before
you know
Zoom
what I mean.
and Discord. Before Discord got its
Oh, before
video
Discord.
up.
Yeah.
So this was like
In the
beta
day.
version.
Back in the day.
Wow.
It worked pretty well.
Yeah.
But like I definitely learned how to have conflict resolution long distance instead of being together, because I think it would be too late if it's together. Like
Yeah.
you're
Well, with conflict resolution, when you're apart, it's just like, oh, sorry, my internet is up. You just hang up the call.
No, but it
No.
also like you have to take into consideration the time difference. Like at least
Oh,
for
yeah, true.
Ludwig and I, we're 6 hours apart.
Yeah.
So when things happen that we do not agree upon, it is normally during times that we value very highly. So we also disagreed from a heightened point of emotion. So for example, like the first time I had a really frustrating time with Ludwig was when he was playing video games while I was talking to him, and he wasn't paying attention, and I was just like, I'm wasting my time. Like, why am I doing this?
I did the same thing.
Yep. Learning process.
No comment. No comment.
And like I know your intention was like, watch me play video games, and I'm like,
Because I love playing video games.
and I would
I'm sharing
like
this moment with you.
it would be different if I was next to him so that I could interact with him, like shaking his shoulder like, oh my god, go faster, or something like that. But I'm just staring at a screen of him staring at a screen, and I want to chat. I'm not on a call to, like, if it were occasion where it's like, I just need some white noise, I need to study or something like that, yeah. Play some video games.
Yeah.
You're kind of here, we're just kind of vibing together.
Yeah.
But typically, if I was online, I wanted to chat with him, and he wanted to play video games, and I'm like,
Great. Okay.
do
then I
you
guess-
even want to chat? Like, do you still want to talk?
Honey, it's okay. Ieyasu Tokugawa in Summer Warriors 3 is a very powerful unit, and I just need to mow down at least 500 more troops. You can watch me do that. The combos are sick.
And I'd be like, that's nice, dear.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yep.
That's the moment where you immediately have to shut down the computer.
Plus, I can't even see his TV screen all that well.
It was an old one, too.
Yeah, it was. It was like
Oh,
one of the, was it a plasma?
No.
It wasn't a plasma.
It was the old school, like, what do you call it?
Oh, was it a box?
Yeah, it was an old box.
It was a big
my.
box.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that'll do it.
So there was like a glare, not to mention like just the resolution wasn't that great. So he's just like, "Do you see that?" I'm like, "Not really."
But I'm just sharing to you what I love the most.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
sharing is also very, like, this is also a very powerful testament to the power of medium. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, like, my university days when I had to study this. But, like, the medium really changes that experience to, like, so profoundly that if it wasn't on that medium, it would have been, like, something completely different.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that element. But I also think one of the more interesting things that you brought up was when you want white noise, you actively choose to be with your partner for this, which is really great because it's kind of like the basis of what it's like being in person, of like sitting together, not really interacting with each other, but still have each other's company.
Yeah.
So that's a really great replacement for folks who miss that or need that in their relationship. But it does come at a cost because
It does. It does come on the cost of, as we said, of attention for each other. And I see that sometimes in our relationship, even nowadays, especially in times when we are stressy and or when we were very stressed out and there's a lot of work going on, we both fall back to our original coping mechanisms of how do we deal with stress. I tend to basically pull myself into myself and just disappear, and Grae tends to work until they fall asleep, basically, until they knock out. And sometimes I realize that this whole day has come to pass and we only had like 2 or 3 meaningful interactions with each other.
Do you find that even being together, you had to explain to your partner how you deal with stress?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I remember Cheryl had the hardest time explaining that to me. And I had to get used to that because I was like, what do you mean you deal with stress like this? That doesn't make any sense. But it makes perfect sense to Cheryl.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. This was one of the most meaningful realizations in our relationship, to understand why the other or how the partner is reacting towards stress. What are the coping mechanisms, and to make that into a part of the relationship instead of a problem. Right?
Ooh.
Like nowadays, Grae, when they see that I'm super stressed out, they offer me, hey, do you need time alone for yourself? Do you need to figure this out alone? Or do you just want to be thrown into bed, just a couple of blankets on top of you and be cuddled? This is usually the big fallback strategy when I have a nervous breakdown, which tends to happen from time to time.
Of course, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, with Cheryl is really interesting because I am very much a touch first kind of person. So when I see Cheryl getting stressed out, I'm like, oh my god, honey, do you need anything? And I'm holding hands, hugging, cuddling. Cheryl would sometimes get even more stressed out. It wasn't until a couple of years into our relationship, like being together, that you actually told me sometimes touch just overwhelms me and I need some time just to recenter myself. So nowadays I always ask, like, do you want, can I hold your hand? Can I hug? And Cheryl will just be like, no, or I'm okay with holding hands, and then we'll talk it out.
And it's weird because on the inverse, I don't do this anymore, but before I started antidepressants, I'd like have full on like panic attacks where I'm just like raging and whatnot, and he'd like actually like hold me down.
Oh my.
Like actually like physically, he'd like he'd like pull me to the bed, he'd like lie on top of me, he'd like hold me tight, he'd like, you would like basically martial arts me.
Yeah, I would.
You would basically like you would basically taekwondo me, like grapple me into a position of where I can't struggle. So I'd be like struggling, like physically, just having essentially like a temper tantrum, and he'd just hold on until I was done, and he'd be like, "You done?" And that was the only way that I could deal with that sort of thing without hurting myself at the time.
Yes.
I'm a lot better now. I don't have those sort of things now, literally just because I'm on meds now. But that's an interesting point, because now I'm able to communicate. When you did that, it freaked me out, but it was the only way that you knew how to handle the situation when I was freaking out.
Because that's how I showed love. I would throw them to the ground.
Just submission to panic attack.
And I'm like,
I love you.
I'm like stuck in my own head, so I'm just like, stop touching me, but I'm not communicating that, so I'm just like, and so now I can be like, yo, get your hands off me, and he's like, cool,
Okay,
great.
No problem. I'll give you the time that you need.
I feel strangely related to that because I am very much.
You throw Grae to the
No.
ground.
But I'm a very touchy-feely person. In this situation, when I see somebody stressed out, like one of my first go-to is gives hug and touching and everything.
Yeah.
But Grae reacts the same exact way. Like they are like, just internalizing it and getting very stiff and
Like
rigid.
freeze up and just like get
Absolutely
stiff.
freeze
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
And nowadays, yeah, you do. And nowadays, I learned, especially if it's about work stress, which I would say is around 80% of Grae's stress level.
80%. I don't know. I think it's like
I learned that the
95.2.
only way sometimes is to just let it ride out until they come to a point where they can be like, okay, enough is enough. And so I just stay in the same rooms, stay in the backside, and just go make sure that they drink something from time to time, just by offering hot water and stuff, and just sometimes lightly patting and being like, hey, I'm still here, don't worry about me, don't feel like I'm angry for you at you because you're stressed out, because that is definitely one of Grae's fears. Like, are you angry at me because I cannot spend time with you?
Yeah, because that also makes me think about the extension of that, as in when we were doing long distance, family wasn't really in the picture in the same way they are when you're living together. So I was not used to being so involved with family events since my family is just so small and we don't really need to celebrate every single thing. But Ludwig's family is really big and
Huge!
and they're dispersed everywhere. So any milestones or like things to celebrate, people try to come together all the time. And I'm like, that's a lot of food, but also that's a lot of people, and operating and navigating that all in German, which is
All in
really
German. All.
stressful for me. So I'm not inclined to do family stuff, but also his family is like, we don't know what to do with her as like this person and entity, and I'm just like,
And I don't know what to do with y'all.
I don't know what to do with myself.
Also,
I'm just imagining Grae just being like that little food gremlin under the table. You just come up every 5 minutes, just sandwich.
Actually,
there's Grae. Okay, good. They're doing all right.
Actually, it's even worse. Just imagine a cat growing up in a single household, and suddenly they are being swarmed by golden retrievers who are all
Oh,
very
my Lord.
energetic and all are like, "Hello, cat."
And it's like, okay. But, like, I think my coping mechanism with large families right now is just to be in the kitchen to cook. And if they're not helping me, they can't be in the kitchen. So...
They dad us threw my big brother out of the kitchen. It's like, are you cooking? Are you currently cutting something? Then get the fuck out.
Wow.
I didn't say that. I just said, we need this table space. If you're going to study, there's another table that you can set up for. Like, set up for
Thank
dinner
you.
or work at.
I know that when Cheryl moved in here, they had to navigate my mom.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, no.
It's so strange. Your mom wants to make sure that this is her house.
Yes.
She had always a fair amount, I think, of like respect for me, and I tried to have that same reciprocal respect for her. But I think it was just like there was a touch of like, this is my son. It's like, no, this is my husband, kind of thing.
Yeah, they were fighting for attention almost.
Wasn't that great?
Yay.
And like I operate different from your mom and whatnot, and so my priorities sometimes would be different from hers, and they would clash sometimes. And
Yeah.
it was one of those things where we had to move into the condo for us to actually have our own relationship, because when we were living in the basement, it was always kind of surrounding Felix. My relationship with his mom was always involved with him. And so ever since then, we're completely independent now. There's no control conflict going on. And I don't even mean to say control conflict, because it's not like she was micromanaging. It was not like I was trying to be micromanaging. It's just that dynamic of there's another female body person in my house. That
And they're running my son?
I don't think so. But like now, I'm fine with being around her on my own. I have my own conversations with her. Whereas before,
My mom would be like, Cheryl, did you eat? And you know, when my mom asks you if you've eaten, you're in the good books.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Actually, that's really interesting, because I never had that intense environment with my in-laws. So it was very interesting to try to build a relationship from nothing and also not having a lot of contact because they're not in the same city. So obviously I try to prioritize building a relationship with the family when I was visiting for long distance, just to be like, hi, I'm this partner, but also this isn't like a short-term thing, because sometimes like my family thought Ludwig was my internet boyfriend and for like the longest time, and they're like,
Technically,
over.
currently, it was the longest time.
Now it's internet husband. Thank you very
Hello.
much.
Excuse me.
But it's like, it took a really long time for my parents to accept the fact that Ludwig was my husband and that he is a good husband. But I don't really understand the views that his family has of me. They just knew that I was this person from Canada, and somehow they managed to get married, and then now they're living together. And so spending time with them is like literally going on a trip to another city and then being stuck with them for a couple of days. And so that is like long distance in-law relationship building.
Are they very like laid back, chillax, like whatever
Yes.
kind of thing?
They are very chillax.
Which
Like,
And
fucks
Grace
me
like,
over!
Grace like, where's the structure? Where's the agenda?
I'm like, do you want me to cook for you? Like, nah, it's fine. We just
Yeah.
get bread time. I'm like, the fuck is bread time? That's not dinner. And then they're like, it's good. You know.
Whereas with your parents, like, all right, Felix, you want to go for dinner? Let's take a car ride for 50 minutes and then sit down again and then take another 50 ride back.
My parents
Literally
like to sit
back
down
home.
and
I'm like,
talk.
oh God.
yeah.
Oh!
We,
I think for my. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to briefly mention, we were recently in the States, and we visited my eldest brother, my middle brother came, so like all my brothers were there. Some of my nephew and niece and their significant others were there, and then my parents, and so we had like the whole core family. We literally sat and chatted for like 4 straight hours, and I think it made
drove
him
me crazy.
insane.
Wow.
And I'm used to that because, like, I'm just like, I'll just just check my phone a little bit. It'll be fine. I'll just doze off maybe, because I've done that. I've literally just fallen asleep in the middle of people talking.
Wow.
Whereas Felix is like, let's go for a walk. Let's go somewhere. Let's do something.
Yeah, my family is actually quite the same in that regard.
Oh, really?
Like, they're super hands-offish. What's the relationship of the kids going? Like, my parents look at us and they're like, the kid is happy. Like,
They have
where
like
is my
5 children together, so it's like, of course you can't give that much attention to all of them the same way.
Like, I think they chuckle for themselves or worry for themselves, but they check in with us a lot, like via telephone, or we go for a walk, or whatever. And we also have this huge talking culture. Like, half of my family likes political discussions, and they get
Oh, God.
very opinionated about it. Which I do not like very much, because they get very angry at each other.
Like TLDR, his family loves hiking, and every time I visit them, there's always some sort of long walk that's involved. So I have to mentally prepare for a marathon. And not only like physically, but also socially.
Yeah.
Ludwig,
Yeah.
can we trade parents? Can we trade in-laws? I would gladly go hiking over sitting down for 6 hours straight.
I mean, you can visit me, and you can come with us for one
Yo,
of these walks. They are
spouse swap,
guaranteed to happen.
spouse
Swap.
Spouse swap.
Spouse swap.
So
Okay.
it'll be me and Ludwig then.
All right. Just kind of go, hey man, this is Felix. This is now
It's
my
another
husband.
Asian person.
Another Asian partner.
How would they
You're
know?
bringing home Asians lately, man.
Your parents are gonna be like, oh, Felix. Okay.
Felix.
Transition.
What are you doing here?
Again?
And on that note, just a quick summary. So long distance is like a really great time to have the foundations of building parts of your relationship, whether it's communication, problem solving, or conflict resolution. And then going and living together obviously means new adjustments, but for the long run, and more things come into play, like in-laws, spaces, how we communicate when we're stressed. And I guess
The main thing is just to be patient and to communicate. Like, communication is so important, and
Yeah.
thankfully you learn a lot about that when you're doing long distance, just because you have to
Exactly.
communicate a lot.
You have to communicate.
It will
Yeah.
not work if you don't communicate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
If
I've talked to a couple of friends who are like, "Oh, you're in a long distance relationship. I'm gonna be in a relationship with somebody across the state. I'm really scared." And it's like, if you do not talk to them on a daily basis, whether it's just a text, a phone call, if you try and video chat, it will not work.
And if you don't learn to resolve your conflicts in a long distance relationship
Yeah.
by learning to communicate your feelings and what you actually what your values are, and be ready to engage the values of the others, but it's not having the ability to cuddle each other into submission, aka Felix, that then you will fail.
Don't at me, man. Jeez.
yeah.
He's stronger than he looks.
I totally believe that.
I'm sometimes like, yeah, I could take this guy, and then he's like, listen, do you forget that I'm a black belt?
But the beautiful thing which I noticed after Grace and I came together is that all of these talking skills, all of these soft skills which we developed in a long distance relationship, were absolutely helping us out in our direct relationship as well. Like, we know how nowadays how to resolve our conflicts, and that in a pretty healthy and vastly speedier way than beforehand. Like, beforehand, we wouldn't talk for 2 days. And then eventually talk. And nowadays, like, it's an afternoon, we're just angry at each other and just work our feelings through for ourselves until we come back together and be like, hey, this is how I felt about it. This is what was going wrong for me. What is your point? Like, how can we go on in the future for this?
Yeah.
But I do miss that 2-day delay sometimes.
2-day
No,
business.
I want to be angry at you, but I have to cuddle you tonight.
Please. Please, let me cuddle.
Give me 2 business days to recharge.
6 o'clock.
Hi, you reached Grace Fan 9 Filma. Please leave your message at the tone. I will be gone for 2 days.
Like
Our
when you're on
business time
vacation.
are
Yeah.
Not anytime soon.
And on that note, let us know how you've been dealing with long distance. And if you want us to answer, should I be going into a long distance relationship? And most of the time, we'll probably say, it depends, or no. So,
Wow, okay, just shut down everybody's dreams here.
No.
but we'll cover that in another episode. And you can find us at...
I'm at Composer FA. I'm on Instagram, Twitter. FA as in Felix.
I'm Charshi Blows on Twitter and Insta.
You can find me at Vantage Point, PHAN, on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not on social media that much. I have it, but... And you can find our podcast at...
So on Instagram, you can reach us at our_relationship2_pod, and on Twitter, you can reach us at pod_our.
And you can reach out Ludwig, like I said, via cave.
Via cave.
It has to be written in Old English.
In Old English or preferred Old German, delivered to me in form of a ballad. Preferably 2 hours long.
And on that note, we hope that this episode was somewhat informative for you and to help answer some questions that you may be having about what's the difference between being in a long-distance relationship and then living together. And we hope you have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.